Welcome to the fourth branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today we have a number of topics, very important topics to talk about. As promised, we will continue the discussion on race relations in America. We will also talk about a few topics that are of great importance. You may recall that last week there was, at least for a few days, there was an event or a yearly event that took place in the Republican Party, that's CPAC. And a number of speakers did bring to the audience what we usually refer to in the media as red meat. And that creates, of course, a problem. And we will tackle a few of those topics. We will talk a few of them. And we will also talk about topics of social importance, such as Medicare tax cut and the Green New Deal that has been doing the round in Washington. But we will discuss it in we will discuss those topics in using different prism from what we have done in the past. We will look at it from the perspective of whether it's politics, deception, or if it has anything at all to do with either party trying to advance the affairs of the people. It is important because, well, the United States of America is the only one we have. As people, as constituent, we are the last stop. We are the last possible. Well, as put by George Washington, the structure of the government was set in such a way to prevent certain problem from occurring in this country, from happening in this country. First, we have a structure of government, three equal branches. The people have the power to elect individuals, especially in the legislative and the executive branch, and we also have the power to get rid of them, to remove them from office. But what I believe has become a crisis for the country is the fact that it seems that it was never, the Constitution does not provide a safeguard for the predicament, the current predicament we're in. As such, I believe that America is going through a crisis. As mentioned in the message, the text that you may have received at the beginning of this program, the crisis is not caused by North Korea. It is not caused by Russia. The crisis is internal. It is caused by us, by we, the people, the very people who are supposed to be the last stop when our democracy is in jeopardy. And this problem, this crisis, I said that wrong. It's not caused by us, but we are enabling it. We help to perpetuate the crisis. And we will discuss that in a few minutes. And hopefully explore whether there are ways that we can curb this problem that the country is going through. Now, if you join us for the first time, again, welcome. I would encourage you to go to the People Branch YouTube channel. That is the People Branch YouTube channel, where we have a number of video already archived in our channel. So the steps you see on your screen will help you to get to the place where you ought to go to in order to find videos, previous presentation, or any type of topics that you're looking for that we may have already discussed. You will find those topics on the People Branch YouTube channel. And while you're there, I strongly encourage you to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our channel. And also I encourage you to go to Twitter and follow me on Twitter and follow me on Facebook. It is important because that will help us send you invites, send you updates, and also alert you of other activities that we may get ourselves involved in, and you may want to participate in those activities. We also have the peoplebranch.org website, where we publish a number of articles that either social, political. We even have articles that that address scientific issues, and some even entertainment. So do familiarize yourself with what we're doing at the Fourth Branch, and this way you can help improve, you can help get to our objective, which is to perfect the union. We'll be right back to continue the conversation on race relations in America. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. For the past couple of months, we have been talking about race relations in America. The banner, War on Blacks, is a venue in which we discuss race relations in America. We left off last time, we made a detour during which for the past 2 weeks we had talked about various aspects of the issue. We took contemporaneous examples. We took examples that got a few people upset about the discussion on race relations in America. Today, as we promised, we will continue the conversation right where we left off. If you have not watched this program before, let me remind you that we already have a number of presentations done in regards to race relation in America. Again, if you head to the People Branch YouTube channel, you will find that there are really plenty of video for around that issue. They are mostly under the banner of either war on blacks, institutionalized racism, or race relation. So I strongly suggest you head to the People Branch YouTube channel and take a listen at those videos. Will give you a good background so that you understand exactly what we're doing with this particular topic and where we're heading. Now, last time we left at the bottom of the bridge, what we call the Civil War bridge. Now, this is not the bridge during the Civil War. It's just a representation as to how we trying to explain what happened on the bridge, and on each side of the bridge, what exactly we visualize happened during the Civil War. Now, you may recall that the Civil War occurred because there were two major groups of people. The country was pretty much divided. Now, for as long as we can remember, we've been talking about the big divide in the country. Well, during that time, during slavery time, the era of slavery, it was really the time when the country was truly divided. And it wasn't just a division in terms of Democrats who wanted something and Republicans didn't want it, and that was it. It was just conversation. It was just a bickering between those two parties. It was worse than that. As mentioned, we're talking about civil war. So the two sides did not just talk. We went to war. Well, not with what you would expect. Usually when you go to war with an enemy. But the war happened. It's what a civil war is. The war happened among the citizens of the country. Two groups. One group wanted slavery around. The other group say, no, we don't want slavery around anymore. And again, that's the reason we encourage you to go and listen to those previous videos, because we explain those details, those items, the time of not only before the Civil War, during the slavery, we explain in detail all the various time that we went through to get to the Civil War. Now, we are now interested in what happened beyond the Civil War. Now, that bridge you're looking at is a representation as to what we think happened immediately after the Civil War. You notice that there is an arrow that pointed to, well, back to slavery, and it's in red. And on the left-hand side, there is an arrow that pointed to freedom. It's in green. And of course, the Civil War, the bridge itself is where all the casualties occurred. People who lost their lives, and of course, people who were wounded. So there were really a lot of casualties. And as you may recall, that we mentioned that in total, it was estimated that we may have had at close to 1 million people who may have lost their lives. Well, between those who lost their lives and the wounded, close to 1 million people. Now, Civil War over, the group which fought against slavery won. Yay! No more slavery, at least officially. No more slave. The era of slavery was over. Now we're gonna tackle this discussion with the assumption that all the slaves were freed. And the reason for that, we don't want to complicate matters any more than they already are. And the reason I say that is because despite the fact that the Union won the Civil War, and the president at that time, Abraham Lincoln, signed the executive order, the Emancipation Act, to put an end officially to slavery, but that did not really end slavery. You may have, if you've been watching this program, you're already aware of the fact that I mentioned that even in 1965, it's 100 years, a century later, there were still blacks. There were blacks who were still slaves. Yes, a century later. A century beyond the Civil War, a century beyond the Emancipation Act. Now, it wasn't a widespread situation, but nevertheless, we're talking about in the midst of the 20th century, 1965, that's almost at the end of the 20th century. There were blacks who were still slaves. But we are not going to talk about those details because we would like to take the conversation pretending, or at least assuming rather, that all the slaves were free. Now, let's look at it from that perspective. All the blacks who were slaves, suddenly they wake up one day, the Union won the Civil War, and they were freed. So what happened? What did they do? How did they adjust to society? What did they have? Where did they go? Well, the story is beyond the Civil War, not much was changed for blacks. And by not much, we mean really not much. They were no longer slaves. They were not. They no longer had to worry about the white slave owners. They no longer had to worry about walking down the street and feel that someone is going to report that a slave has escaped, because, well, they were no longer slaves. But that simplifies. When we talk about end of slavery, it conveys a situation which, for anyone who simply processes information in a very simplistic manner, would come to you and say, gee, since 1865, blacks were no longer slaves. How come they still in the predicament that they in? Because today, when you have conversation with, especially people who are racist, and sometimes people who do not have an understanding of what the process, what that particular time in history did, they simply assume that, well, you should have done better. You should have been better. By now, we shouldn't really be talking about blacks struggling in our society, because it's been over a century now, and yet we're still talking about slavery. Well, in order to understand the effect, the impact that slavery had on blacks, but most importantly, in order to understand why blacks are in the predicament that they're in today, we have to go back to what happened beyond slavery. What happened? What exactly happened? Now, we're going to talk about mostly on the white side, because remember, blacks were slaves and they had no say over anything. They could not even complain about the predicament they were in. They could not escape the predicament they were in. And if they try, as many did, the outcome, the end result for those blacks were pretty bad. Some of them lost their lives. We gave you a number of such examples of blacks who lost their lives, and most of the time those executions were done publicly in order to scare the other slave, in order to instill fear in the other slave, so that that didn't come to their mind to try the same thing. Now, but hey, 1865, Civil War happened, the Union won, blacks were no longer slaves. But one thing that we have discovered is those individuals. So when we're talking about racism, when we're talking about institutionalized racism, it's not just a beautiful word or a beautiful expression that means nothing. For blacks, this is dreadful, because it is a very scary thing when we're talking about racism, when we're talking about institutionalized racism. And the reason it is because today some blacks, which I have had conversation with, which seems to take which seems to be concerned even about the fact that I'm talking about war on blacks. I had a couple of blacks, at least people who identify themselves as black, who take issue at even at the banner that says war on blacks, because in their mind they think, well, by framing it that way, I'm preventing, at least that's their opinion, I'm preventing the conversation, I'm preventing the conversation, the predicament from being improved. I'm preventing whites from changing their behavior, from going through the process of changing or modifying their ways, their sentiment towards black. Now, I do understand this type of rationale from blacks, from individuals who fear that, well, they are in a position, they either have, well, white friends, they either associated themselves with however that they have this type of relationship, whether they're dating or they married to or they go to school with, etc., etc. They feel that this type of conversation is not helping. Well, I pause for a second to understand that very type of what they're trying to say, and I do grasp it, and we will come to that. But today we are going to address the issue from a white perspective, and we will come back to address this aspect of the conversation that blacks seems to have an issue with. Now, after the Civil War, not much has changed. And the reason that there was not much, things weren't that different, is because Abraham Lincoln had, whether if he really thought the whole thing through, or he was simply trying to put an end to a practice that he resented, I'm not certain, because there are so many different books written about why he did what he did. Now, we mentioned many times here that Abraham Lincoln himself was not a slave owner. His parents weren't slave owner. At least we have that as a starting point to get a sense as to the fact that Abraham Lincoln was among those who believed that it was not okay. We get that. it was not okay for people, for white, to enslave blacks. Now, some historian believe that the reason that Abraham Lincoln did not have slaves is because he could not afford it. Well, this is simply speculation, because in those days it was so widespread that it's not any different than today when you see people strive to possess something that they figured is give them stature. So whether those historians are right or wrong is not the subject of the conversation. But whites move from ruling over blacks as white slave owners now to making certain, because they were in control. You may have remembered I mentioned that before. They were in control of everything. Remember, blacks were slaves? They were in control of everything. Think of anything in life, whether to get a job, to get an education, to get on public transportation, every aspect of life was controlled by whites. Now, granted, as we mentioned before, that the South was very nasty toward blacks because they were not happy at all. Because remember, the South relied on free labor, on slaves, on blacks that they didn't have to pay anything, they didn't have to care for. They rely exclusively on blacks to enrich themselves, to send their kids to school, to send their kids to college, to increase their business, to buy land, to buy houses. So when Abraham Lincoln said no more slave, whites were furious. But what can you do? Was the president of the United States. So you could not reverse that because, well, he was the president. You could not change that. But whites, those same whites, those same individuals today, and a number of them come from the lineage of white slave owners who claim to be Christian, who claim to have conservative values. Those same individuals, they were so angry that now they could not have slaves, they decided to make the lives of blacks hell. Yes, those Christians, those who have such great values, those same individuals, they decided, we cannot have you as slaves anymore, but we're going to make sure you starve to death. We're going to make sure you cannot get a job. We're going to make sure you cannot go to school. We're going to make sure that you struggle to even stay alive. Yes, war on blacks is not just a term. It's not a beautiful expression. It's not for sensationalism. It is what has been the structure, the system that was put in place beyond the Civil War in order to make certain that blacks do not get anywhere beyond slavery. So the idea that slavery ended after the Civil War, which is that? Slavery ended. Since we're discussing just the side of the white, we'll continue the conversation on that aspect to show you that the end of slavery did not make life any better for blacks, at least for a very long time. So why do blacks continue to struggle? That's something we will find out as we continue the conversation about war on blacks.
Hi, I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program. War on blacks is a topic added to the Fourth Branch programming in order to discuss the intricacies, the complexities of race relation in America. The goal is threefold. 1. To bring attention to the various forms of prejudice, discrimination, and racism in the country. 2. To expose the undeniable presence of such in every aspect of life and every corner of our society. 3. To extricate us all from the ignorance, the indifference, or the complicity. The ultimate objective is to make the discussions of those issues, racism, prejudice, discrimination, a normal part of our lives. Then, and only then, will we as a society be able to eradicate the problem. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Abraham Joshua Heschel exclaimed, "Racism is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason." Join me in the journey to restore equality. Or would you please get out of the way? Thank you.
I mentioned several times here in this program that America is in crisis. Now we will take a look at a number of important topics which help to point to that very fact, but we will also address the major, what really behind that problem. Because it's not just an expression to scare people. It is an expression to point to a situation that's, well, bad for the country. Now, let's start by taking a look at something that, well, took us by surprise. September 11, 2001. At exactly 9:02 a.m., a commercial airliner hijacked by Islamic terrorists hit the Twin Tower in Manhattan. At exactly 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. Panic ensued. There were several people, thousands of people inside those towers. Frenzy, panic, chaos. Less than half an hour later, that's around 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed. more casualties. Throughout the day, the United States of America, the world even, was in consternation. By 5 p.m., 7 World Trade Center collapsed, leaving behind mountains of dust, debris, and yes, human casualties. Life will never be the same again in the United States, and probably never will. Today, when you go to the airport, you go through, well, hell. You have to be stripped. They have machines that can see through you, that can pretty much undress you completely. You have to remove your shoes. Life has changed. Today, another crisis, probably worse than 9/11, looms in the horizon. Now, if we believe the Bush administration, 9/11 was completely unforeseen. In other words, we did not know that was going to happen. But today, the crisis that looms in the horizon has been playing, at least the signs, has been here. All the signs have been here. We've seen the sign. We've ignored it. Well, some of us embraced, even argued that it's okay. You may recall that before the tragedy happened, September 11, 2001, you may recall that we were just going about our business. Nobody cares about anything. You hop on the train, on the bus, you were doing what you were doing, you always have done. People rushing to work, dropping their kids at school, people coming from work, and so on and so forth. Life was just what it had always been. We just didn't have any care in the world. In fact, if someone were to propose, even suggest something as tragic as 9/11, we would laugh at that individual. But it happened. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when 9/11 happened, if we ought to believe the Bush administration, we had no idea it was going to happen. And we're not here to discuss whether the administration was right or wrong, but to make a point. So we'll go by, we did not know. But today, the crisis looming in the horizon is here. It is crystal clear that the United States of America is going through a crisis that could be more devastating than 9/11. No, it is not the ICBM from North Korea. It is not even the threat that Russia made because of new weapons that they have. None of that can be as devastating as the crisis looming in the horizon. But this time, we are well aware of the crisis. What we choose to do would determine whether we pay a price or manage to avert the crisis.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Peter O'Rourke said that in the past, we used to look for people with information and broadcast it. That's what news is supposed to be. But today, we look for people with ignorance to spread it around. Now, for as long as I have been hosting this program, I have been talking about ignorance as a major obstacle to our democracy. In fact, I've already got a lot of pushback for, well, calling individuals, especially in the Republican Party, ignorant, gullible, naive. And my rebuttal is, I call the devil by its name, because it makes no difference whatsoever. We have had decades of people in the news trying to dance around issues that have plagued the country. And as time goes by, the more they dance around the issues, well, the worse it got. We used to talk about big divide as a way to explain why nothing can get done in Washington. We say it's a disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. Now it plays this type of conversation in the public are embraced by politicians, especially Republicans are masters of deception. It's almost as if they have a school that they go to in order to become that good. Now, I'm not sparing the Democrats for doing their shares of. But the problem that the country is always, the crisis could be easily resolved. Now I strike the word easily, but could be resolved if only, and I focus on Republicans for one reason and one reason alone, because I studied both parties. Now you would agree with me that there are issues that everybody can disagree with Democrats, because those issues are either issues that you do not want, you will not support, and so on and so forth. Everybody can agree with that, but that's not really what causes gridlock in Washington. I'll take one of a very sensitive topic. Let's take abortion. Now I take that particular example because at CPAC, Mike Pence talked about that, and I watch in dismay how the Vice President of the United States stood on the stage, and everything that he said as far as the discussion of this topic to that audience was lie. Now it is one thing, and I try to make the distinction. There is a big difference between politics and deception. But for some reason, Republicans have gotten so good, they make that the politics of deception. And by difference, and if we want anything, if we want our country to move forward, it is necessary not only to try to understand the difference between politics and deception, but also to hold elected officials accountable for their deception, because that doesn't help. Now if you're a Republican, you may enjoy the immediate reward of someone deceiving the rest of the constituent and get away with it. Yes, there is always some sort of immediate reward for it. But long term, the country will pay a price. And we are looking at a crisis in the country that is not something that happened with the presidency of Donald Trump, because a lot of Democrats like to point fingers to Donald Trump as the problem. Yes, granted, Donald Trump has exacerbated the problem that the country is going through. But Donald Trump is not the problem. Donald Trump is simply a symptom of the problem in the Republican Party. Now, let's go back to our example. Abortion. Now, if we ought to believe, because we'll take everything in order to move the conversation forward, we'll take the discussion of abortion really at face value on both sides. Meaning, Republicans say, no matter what, we don't want to hear about abortion. Democrats, on the other hand, say there are circumstances which should give the individual, the women, the right to decide whether they should carry the baby to term or they should have an abortion. And they use examples such as rape, incest, and so on. Now, we can all agree this is a very troubling topic. It's a very sensitive topic, and we can say in all fairness that if you take the position that no matter whatever it is, a woman get raped, get to keep the baby, and pregnant, get to keep the baby, incest, the woman should keep the baby. I'm referring to on the Republican side. And Democrats, of course, as I just mentioned, they have their positions depend on the circumstances. Now, that's a disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. That's fine, and that can be resolved, however it is resolved in legislation and so on. And there is no problem there. Republicans in control can decide to pass legislation that pretty much cut Democrats out. Not that it's okay, but they can decide to go that route. But it is deception when you have the Vice President of the United States standing in front of an audience and tell you that Democrats just want women to have abortion. It is deception. Because, by the way, the conversation is not really about abortion. I took that example to make a point as to why we are where we are. It's not because we cannot have solution for problem, but because Republican legislators, elected officials, they use this deception as a strategy. And the reason that they can get away with it is because, well, their constituents, here we go again, are ignorant, gullible, and naive. Now you can dance on your head and think, well, I shouldn't say that. But that is the fact. You talk to any, or most, I should say, if you take that particular topic that I just mentioned, there is no point of argument. There is no place at all for a conversation to get to a point where there is some sort of compromise. And the reason I took that example is because I want to get to what now has become the buzzwords, the sound bites in the Republican circle, socialism. Republicans have used the strategy of deception, and the reason for that is actually very simple. They do not have anything to offer. So they scare the constituent. That's the strategy of fear and deception. If they scare you enough from the other guy, then what do? You vote for them, no matter how bad they are, no matter what they do, even if they're not attending to your interest, even if they hurting you, but they scare you enough so that you don't look that there is an alternative. That's not just talk for the sake of talking. During the Obama term, the Obama tenure, Republican for 6 full years, and we're not just talking about the Republican legislators, we're talking about Republicans in general, especially those who have large group of people either following them, listening to them. As a group, they had a message of deception for all the Republicans. Obamacare, death panel. You should avoid it at all costs because, well, your grandparents will be put to death by Obamacare. Obamacare is going to kill jobs. You should do anything you can to prevent it from happening because you would lose your job. I don't know if you see the problem in that. That's not politics. That's deception. And the reason it is deception is because those individuals that were doing those things knew well that what they were saying was not true. We know that, and we have proof, and we'll tell you exactly what the proof is. So they know they're lying to you. They know they're lying to the constituent. That's what deception is. That's not politics. I gave you 2 examples of politics before, and let me remind you what politics is about, so that you can make the distinction between politics and deception. And the reason it's that important, and the reason I put so much emphasis on that, is because Republican legislators do not care an iota about the country. They do not care an iota about the constituent as long as they get to keep their job. To hell with the United States of America. Coincidentally, I did write a few weeks ago a similar article, To Hell with the United States, which you can find on the peoplebranch.org website. What other reason do they have to do that? What other reason do Republican legislators have to deliberately lie to their constituent? What other reasons? We're not talking about lies, we know all politicians lie, that we say that all politicians lie. But Republican legislators make it a strategy for Republican legislators. We're not talking about small lies here and there. They lie, and they lie some more about the lie. They go on radio, they go on TV, they expand the lie, and the lie becomes almost the truth for the Republican Party. And that's something that's a page they borrow right out of Adolf Hitler's book. Adolf Hitler said, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. Yes, right out of Adolf Hitler's book. Republican legislators, they do not do politics. They deceive their constituent because they do not have anything to offer. So the best strategy is to scare the constituent away from someone from another party that may provide an alternative. Case in point, Obamacare. For 62 times they try to repeal Obamacare because it's bad. It's going to kill grandpa. It's going to kill grandma. It's going to kill job. It's bad for the country. what did they have? What did they offer? Absolutely nothing. But here's where we know that it was deception. It's because during the 2018 midterm, they came to you because by then you have already found out that a number of aspects of the Obamacare would be very good to have. So now they realize that. Now they came to you and they say, guess what? If you elect me, if you send me back to Washington, we're going to make sure that we keep that for you. Now, if something was bad, why all of a sudden you want to change and try to support it? Yes, they were deceiving you all that time. Here's the difference between politics and deception. The example I just gave you about Republicans lying to you, not only they tell you that is the way it is because they rely on the fact that the constituents are going to believe what they say because they repeat it over and over and over. They go on Fox, they go to all the places that would just amplify that message for them. And it becomes exactly what Adolf Hitler predicted. The Republican constituent see that as the truth. Now here's an example of politics. Remember during Obama last year in office, he tried to put someone on the Supreme Court, a judge, and Mitch McConnell maneuvered to prevent that from happening. Of course, he gave a bunch of reasons that you can say were bogus, but regardless, he outwitted the Democrats. So he prevented Obama from putting someone on the Supreme Court. That's politics. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's politics. Remember when Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to Donald Trump about the State of the Union address? And she carefully crafted the letter by saying, Mr. President, because we are not able to assure to your safety, you're going to have to postpone the State of the Union address until the shutdown was over. Remember that? That's politics. You have someone who is able to use a specific circumstance and use that to his or her favor. That's politics. But when you tell your constituent Obamacare is a death panel, that's deception. And the reason it's deception is that because they don't know, they know that's not true, but they pass that message and have other places amplify that message so that it becomes to a point where the constituent believes it. That's deception. When they pass the $1.5 trillion tax cut and say it's a tax for the people, a tax cut for the people, that's deception. And the reason it's deception is because they knew that that money, or at least the majority, the major part of the money, was not going to the people. They were the one crafting the legislation. That's deception. And why should I care? Well, we will show you why it is important for us to care about that problem. Because we have a number of issues that we will talk about, including the fact that today that you have Republicans. The Republican machine now out there telling you that Democrats want to move to socialism. Seriously. What's the reason? What do you think is the reason? Do they seriously believe that's true? Now, suppose they do. We're just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Do we have a government structure that allows that? The answer is absolutely not. We don't have the structure of our government would never allow anyone, no matter how much that individual could have embraced socialism. Let's say, for sake of argument, that's the case. No matter how much someone could have embraced that, our government, our structure of government would not allow that to be the case. But why do you think Republicans are use that as their new lie, their new buzzword, their new soundbite? Is to scare constituents away so that they do not vote for Democrats and they put in office what we have today in the Oval Office. That's all it is. So socialism now become the new word to scare everybody away. We don't want socialism. We heard it at CPAC. Now they're trying to scare everyone away by telling you how bad socialism is. Now I don't care how bad or how good socialism is. The point I'm trying to make is we do have a form of government that would never allow that to be the case, no matter who is in the Oval Office. So the fact that Republicans today jump on the bandwagon and trying to tell you we cannot let our country become a socialist country is just a scare tactic, because they know full well that it's impossible, no matter who sits in the Oval Office. But that's a new buzzword, that's a new soundbite. The reason is very simple. There is nothing to offer. Always watch the Republicans every time that they come with scare tactic, because they use fear and deception. Why not offer something instead of trying to scare people away from something? During the Obama's tenure, they didn't have anything to offer, so they scared people away. Grandma is going to be killed. We're going to lose so many jobs. Those are scare tactics. There was nothing for them to offer. Absolutely nothing. Zero. They had nothing. So they used the scare tactic. Once again, 2020 is around the corner. They come back with the exact same thing. Scaring the constituent away. The reason is simple. They have Republican legislators have absolutely nothing to offer. It's already so obvious that there is nothing for them to offer. So what is the best way to make sure that they keep their job, no matter how bad they're doing, no matter how much they're hurting the country? By scaring you away from the other side. When we come back next time, we will show you why it's important to try to shut that tactic down, because it is hurting the country. It has put the country in a situation where it is in serious, our country is in serious crisis, in serious jeopardy. And you should not allow your elected official to continue to take a ride on ignorance, on gullibility, on naiveness, because that's what they rely on. They rely on the fact that if they say it enough, we don't want socialism, we don't want socialism, we don't want socialism, it's going to become so scary that at the end of the day you say, you know what, I hate that guy, he's not doing a great job, but I don't want socialism. But the fact of the matter is, there cannot be any socialism in the United States because the structure of our government does not allow that. It is mind-boggling. But unfortunately, that's the only tool the Republicans have for you. They practice the politics of deception. What do they have to offer?
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy, constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies presented to its audience as news. Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore.
Tomorrow, we will discuss Medicare Part D. We will also talk about tax cut versus entitlement cut. We will try to at least touch on the Green New Deal. And each one of those topics, we will try our best to pinpoint in each instance why your Republican legislators, why they are against something and for something, and we will give you example of such, and you will be able to determine for yourself whether that's in your advantage or not, because the whole point of this is really to put those aspects, those items as part of our tools fighting not against a particular party, because the fight is really to fight against ignorance, because when you're not in possession of information, you will make decisions that may not be good for you. But most importantly, we're not even concerned about our time here. We more concerned about future generation. And because of that, when legislators make decisions that are bad, it's not just impacting us today. It will impact future generation. For that reason, we cannot just shrug it off. We may like, as I mentioned at the top of the program, instantaneous gratification. We may like it because, hey, if something happened today, we get the reward immediately and we think, hey, that's okay. But we cannot live just for this moment in time. If we ought to preserve the country for future generation, we cannot support something that elected officials are doing today because it benefits large corporations and it helps them get campaign finance money in order to keep their job. It's time that we, the people, make decisions not based on political party, but based on legislation that are not just good for today, but legislation that will help the country, that will help improve the country for future generations. I'll be right back.
I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Thank you for spending the time with me. I hope this information were useful. I hope to see you again tomorrow at 2 p.m. In the meantime, if you have questions, comments, criticism, do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have a topic you would like us to talk about, please let us know. We will spend some time to research it and discuss it right here. Again, just so that you can make decision. We're not here to tell you which party to belong to, but we're here to tell you what each party is doing that's not good for the country, that's not good for the constituent of that party. You have a wonderful afternoon or evening, whichever it happened to be.
The Fourth Branch Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
What if hip-hop never existed? Question. Do you think there'd be as many heads screaming out, stop snitching? I wonder. What if Adam and Eve ain't eat the fruit? What? You think we'd be able to see the truth? Or what if Albert Einstein ain't think of the nuke? Or Smith & Wesson ain't teach us to shoot? You think there'd be as many plays out there if there was no boost? Matter of fact, what if white man hung off a noose? Would it still be cool to say nigga? Or maybe we would make six figures? Or would we wanna be crackers? And all the whites would be rappers? What if Martin Luther King survived? You think the New Orleans flood would have caused him to drop and die? I wonder what if and see what is. Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? If Christopher Wallace never got murked, how much money would Sean Carter be worth? What if Tupac never got hit with the flame? Would the game still have changed, filled with these lames? What if Jabari wasn't speeding down the street? What if the bullet Malcolm sent never hit Zeke? A black guy dropped off at the house instead of the stop? Or Ali never got bopped by the cops? What if the little homie EZ didn't die? Stand back from the picture and ask yourself why. What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on? What if life wasn't all you thought? What if everything you knew was gone? What if we switched to rights and wrongs? You think you'd change your route to the road we on?